Hare Krishna. I'll share my screen now. We are live.
Rumpa Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Yes, Mataji. I'll share.
Yes, Mataji. No, I wanted to ask if you needed 5 minutes kirtan.
Oh, is it?
No. In case you need time, Mataji. Otherwise, no.
Okay, no, Mataji. I'm done. I think we can begin. These are some of the slides are from Understand Gita 18 days, but this is advanced class, so we are going in depth. So since we already finished the first 20 verses, we'll just do a quick revision and then move on. Okay, I'll just start. So let's pay our obeisances to Sri Prabhupada. Whatever we are going to learn is based on the teachings of His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So we have learned all this in our 18 days class also. These slides we have already seen. And I'm sure yesterday also we did a little, revision of all this. So ISKCON was founded in 1966, July. This is Prabhupada. When he was a child, he wanted to conduct Rath Yatra. And then, we have gone over all this. So let me quickly move on to the next few slides. So this is Prabhupada. He traveled to America in a cargo ship, which was which was named Jaladuta. He was preaching Krishna consciousness across the globe. He translated over 70 Vedic literatures for us. Let's pay our obeisances to Sri Radha Govinda. So this is our temple address. So Bhagavad-Gita is an epic scripture that has the answers to all our problems. It was considered a spiritual dictionary by Mahatma Gandhi, and it is a book of inspiration for many leaders across the planet. Bhagavad-Gita is timeless. So in our 18 days, since we have already finished the 18 days, we get insights into our world, soul, God, what is true love, what is happiness, all this was covered in the book, right? So when we did our 18 days course, we got a bigger picture, like we know what is the book about and what are the different chapters about. We got an overview of everything that is in the book. And we also understood at the end of the 18th day, we understood it is Krishna is talking about the ultimate perfection of life. We have read so many books, right? There are so many books available on yoga. But if there is one simple book of yoga, which is very direct, easy to understand and straightforward, that is Bhagavad-Gita. There's no confusion. There are many instructions by Krishna, but the ultimate message is very clear, crystal clear and very straightforward. Okay. So at the end, what was Krishna saying to us? He was saying, chant, remember me, become my devotee, surrender unto me. So we please Krishna, we do devotional service unto Krishna, and what does Krishna do? What will he do? Mokshayishyami ma shuchaha. He says, don't worry, I will take you out of this miserable condition, which is the cycle of birth and death. That was Krishna's promise. So that's what we understood at the end of the 18th chapter. That's how Arjuna understood it, and we have to understand in the same way. So it is very clear, and we also understood that about Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojana, right? What we should know, what we should do, and what we should be. What is Sambandha? Our relationship with Krishna. What is Abhideya? According to that relationship, what do you do? Your devotional service, your activities. Prayojana is what that's the goal, ultimate goal of life. And according to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the greatest necessity for a human being is the achievement of love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is the ultimate goal. So let's move on. Some testimonies from great people in our history. We have already read these. So let me go on to the next slide. And why ISKCON's Bhagavad-Gita as it is? Why? Because we must learn Bhagavad-Gita from a spiritual master who comes from coming from a bona fide parampara system. So it must be heard and understood through unbroken chain of disciplic succession. So Gita is a vast book. A systematic study of Gita will take about an year. So there are totally 700 verses in Bhagavad Gita. Lord Krishna spoke 574, Arjuna 84, Sanjaya 41, Dhritarashtra 1. He spoke only one verse. So 5 things discussed in Bhagavad Gita as it is. Can you tell me quickly what those are? If you are able to unmute yourself. Because we have already done the 18 days course, and I'm sure yesterday also.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Yes, Mataji.
Ishvara, Jiva, Prakriti, Kala, and Karma.
Yes, Mataji. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ishvara, Jiva, Prakriti, Kala are eternal. Karma is temporary. So Krishna is discussed, who is Ishvara, then material nature, Prakriti. Jiva is the soul. Kala is the time factor. And karma. Karma is an activity that gives another material body to the conditioned soul. The mood of Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna's bewilderment and appearance of illusion must be understood to be Krishna's arrangement. So Arjuna was put under illusion so that Krishna could speak. Krishna put him under illusion so that he could speak Bhagavad Gita. If not for Arjuna's confusion and bewilderment, there would have been no necessity for Krishna to speak the Bhagavad Gita to rescue him. Although Arjuna is the apparent first listener of the Bhagavad Gita, it is for the benefit of everyone. Krishna drove the chariot in midst of both armies. So this is the beginning scene. Imagine 64 crores of people in this one picture. It was a huge battle. So let's begin. So Arjuna Vishada Yoga, Arjuna's yoga of lamentation, observation of the armies, right? So Arjuna's yoga of lamentation, what exactly is happening here? And do you know who is eligible to listen to Bhagavad Gita? Can you just give me an answer?
Someone who's submissive, Mataji. Submissive and surrendered.
Anyone else?
A devotee of Krishna.
Any other answers, Mataji?
If Krishna's mercy is there, Mataji.
Okay. Anyone in the world who is going through the cycle of birth, death, old age, disease, such a person can benefit from this knowledge of Bhagavad Gita. He is eligible. Bhagavad Gita is for everyone. Krishna is all attractive and it is meant for every person, every creature that is going through this cycle of birth and death. It's not for a particular sect of people or a particular religion or nothing like that. Everyone can benefit from this. So section A, 1.1 to 1.27, these verses discuss preparations for war, and section B, 1.28 to 1.46, Arjuna's doubts. So we covered this also in our 18 days class, and I'm sure yesterday, since we are still in the beginning, this was also discussed. I'll just quickly go over it in the next 5-10 minutes so that we can brush up on whatever we learned. So cousins from the same family gathered to fight this battle for political reasons, right? Duryodhana was the leader on Kaurava's side and Yudhishthira was the leader on Pandava's side. The main point you should take from this verse, this situation is, sometimes war is inevitable when negotiations fail. Prabhupada writes it very clearly because they tried to negotiate. Duryodhana was not budging. He said, I refuse to give the kingdom to the Pandavas. I won't give land equivalent to a tip of a needle also. So they had to fight. They were forced to fight. So that's how it happened. And this is the first verse. Dhritarashtra vacha dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yutsavaha mamaka pandavas chaiva kimakurvata sanjaya. He's asking what's happening on the battlefield between my sons and Pandu's sons. He's doubtful, he's fearful. Why does he have this fear on his face? Why is he so doubtful? Because he thinks the holy place of Kurukshetra may have a positive influence on the outcome of the battle. He did not any compromise. So he's scared. He thinks, the outcome it may favor Pandavas. So that's why he has this fear on his face. Okay, because he knows Pandavas are very virtuous, they're very religious, but his own sons are not. Okay, 1.2. Sanjaya said, O king, after looking over the army arranged in military formation by the sons of Pandu, King Duryodhana went to his teacher and spoke the following words. Dhritarashtra actually is hearing all this from Sanjaya. Prabhupada writes very clearly, he says Dhritarashtra was blind from birth. We all know that. Unfortunately, he was also bereft of spiritual vision. He knew very well his sons were equally blind in the matter of religion. So Pandavas were all pious. And here Sanjaya is telling him, your son Duryodhana is going to talk to his teacher now. And he's also assuring him, he's encouraging him, because he sees the fear on his face and all that. He says, your sons are not going to compromise under the influence of this holy place. Don't worry about that. Then Duryodhana meets the commander-in-chief. We have discussed this slide before. Oh, my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the sons of Drupada. He is pointing out the defects of Dronacharya. We have discussed this, so I'll move ahead. Since I heard Prabhuji covered 20 verses, so I want to reach the 21st verse. That's why I'm just going a little faster. I just want to skim through these slides so that we get to where we have to start. And here, Duryodhana describing warriors of opposing army. Here in this army are many heroic women equal in fighting to Bhima and Arjuna, great fighters like Virata, Drupada, and Yudhana. So what's happening is Duryodhana knows the strength of Bhima and Arjuna. So Duryodhana is mentioning these names. He's comparing, He says each and every one of them is as formidable as Bhima and Arjuna. Okay. Duryodhana names more warriors. There are also great, heroic, powerful fighters like Drishtaketu, Chikitana, Kashi Raja, Purujit, Kunti Bhoja, and Saibya. Duryodhana names more warriors. There are the mighty Yudhamanyu, the very powerful Uttamauja, the son of Subhadra, and the sons of Draupadi. All these warriors are great chariot fighters. So Duryodhana will now describe his warriors. But for your information, oh best of the Brahmanas, let me tell you about the captains who are especially qualified to lead my military force. Okay. So there are personalities like you, Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, Ashwathama, Vikarna, and the son of Somadatta, called Bhurishrava, who are always victorious in battle. Duryodhana mentions these exceptional heroes, and Vikarna is his brother, and he's mentioning other names. Anye cha bahava shura madate tyakta jivitaha Nana Shastra Praharanaha Sarve Yuddha Visharadaha. There are many other heroes who are prepared to lay down their lives for my sake. All of them are well equipped with different kinds of weapons and all are experienced in military science. There are many warriors he names like Jayadratha, Kritavarma, and he says all are determined to lay down their lives for my sake. That's such a negative statement, isn't it? Like when you start something, any activity, you usually talk auspicious things. So he's saying, look at these people, they are ready to die for me. It's as if, it's already concluded that all of these people would die in the battle of Kurukshetra because they are on his side, for joining the party of the sinful Duryodhana. So, and he's confident of his victory also because he thinks they are very strong. Duryodhana's comparative assessment and conclusion. Our strength is immeasurable and we are perfectly protected by grandfather Bhishma, whereas the strength of the Pandavas, carefully protected by Bhima, is limited. Duryodhana is estimating the comparative strength. He is saying Bhishma is very experienced and so they are protected. But on the other side, it is Bhima who is who's taking care of the forces. He says, in the purport, Prabhupada says, Bhima is as if he's like a fig in presence of Bhishma. He says Bhima is not as experienced as Bhishma. That's what he's trying to say. Aparyaptam, immeasurable or insufficient, protected by Bhishma. Pandavas are protected by Bhima, insignificant as to Bhishma. Actually, Duryodhana is always envious of Bhima. He was always envious. When they were little children also, they had so many instances where he wanted to kill him and, was very envious. So he knows that if at all he's going to die, it's going to be by Bhima. Bhima would be the one who would kill me. So he's also confident of his victory because of all these strong warriors on his side. But he says that Duryodhana is envious of Bhima, only he is capable of defeating him. Duryodhana appeals to other warriors to support Bhishma. All of you must now give full support to grandfather Bhishma as you stand at your respective strategic points of entrance into the phalanx of the army. He said, oh, Bhishma is there, so no need to worry and all this. He was praising the prowess of Bhishma. Then he, is a very good politician. At the same time, he thought, oh my God, I'm saying this. What if others think they are less important? So he's saying, all of you give protection to Bhishma. Bhishma is old, but he's focused on the war. What you do is, you don't leave your strategic positions. You take care of Bhishma. Make sure Bhishma is not attacked by the enemy. They have to protect him. So he's trying to encourage them also. So, and he's also fully confident of the support of Bhishma Dev and Dronacharya. Do you know why he's so confident that Bhishma and Dronacharya will support him in this battle? Can you give me a reason for that? Why is he so confident that Bhishma is going to support him 100%? Harini Mataji, please go ahead, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Duryodhana was confident that Bhishma and Dronacharya will be supporting him because Bhishma was he can't break a word which he gave, and Dronacharya he can't leave Ashwatthama, and Ashwatthama is the friend of Duryodhana, and that's why he's so confident that both of them will support him. Hare Krishna.
Okay. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Rati Mataji. Yes, Mataji, go ahead.
Mataji, because during the disrobing of Draupadi, they kept silent. They did not raise any objection to the insult which Draupadi had to face.
Yes,
So he was
Mataji.
confident that they would support him.
They did not even speak one word when Arjuna's wife Draupadi was helpless. She was appealing, right? She appealed to them for justice, but they didn't do anything. So let me mute you all. So he thinks they are going to support me now also. Since they didn't do anything during the gambling performances, these two generals are going to be with me and I'm going to be fine. No, they are not going to go against me now also. Tasya sanjanayan harsham kuru vruddha pitamaha simhanadam vinadyuchai shankham dadau pratapavan. So then Bhishma, the great valiant grandsire of the Kuru dynasty, the grandfather of the fighters, blew his conch shell very loudly, making a sound like the roar of a lion, giving Duryodhana joy. Why giving Duryodhana joy? Because he understands that Duryodhana is actually little worried, because when he saw the military arrangement on the other side, he's actually little worried, that there is some fear in him. So Bhishma understands his mentality, what he's trying to get at. So he has compassion for him also as a grandfather. So just to cheer him up, he blows the conch shell, but befitting his position as a lion. That's what he says. But this is also a way of offering respects to Krishna. Blowing the conch shell is something very auspicious. We do whenever there is something, very auspicious going on, they blow the conch shell, right? So he's also saying indirectly that there's no chance of victory in this battle for them because Krishna is on the other side. He is conducting the fight from the other side. But he's saying, I'm still going to fight as a duty. I'll do my duty. I will spare no pains. But you should know, or if anybody wants to understand, that there is not going to be any victory because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, is on the other side. That is another indication of blowing the conch shell by Bhishma. Bhishma, out of compassion, to cheer Duryodhana, blew the conch shell very loudly. Duryodhana defeat is certain since Lord Krishna is on the other side. Bhishma fighting as a matter of duty. Those were the important points. Verse 1.13. Thereafter, everyone started blowing their conch shells, bugles, etc. Tata shvetairhayir-yukte mahati syandane sthitau madhava pandavaschaiva divya shankau pradatmatuhu. On the other side, both Lord Krishna and Arjuna, stationed on a great chariot drawn by white horses, sounded their transcendental conch shells. In contrast with the conch shell blown by Bhishma Dev, the conch shells that were in the hands of Krishna and Arjuna are described as Divya. Divya Shankau, transcendental. This indicates that there was no hope of victory for Duryodhana. Okay, because victory is always with people who are associated with Lord Krishna. Okay, wherever and whenever the Lord is present, the goddess of fortune is also present, and she's always there. So obviously the victory is with the person who is with Lord Krishna and who Krishna is supporting. And there is also mention of this chariot. It was gifted by Agni Dev, and it was capable of conquering all sides. Wherever it was drawn, all over the three worlds, it would conquer. It was a very special chariot that was capable of conquering all sides. Observing the armies on the battlefield, these are the names of the conch shells. Lord Krishna's conch shell is Panchajanya. Arjuna's is named Devadatta. Yudhishthira's is Ananta Vijaya. Bhima's is Poundra. Nakula's Sughosha. And Sahadev is Mani Pushpaka. These are the names you can remember. Krishna's, I'm sure you remember Panchajanya. And Arjuna's also Devadatta. But you just have to remember the rest of it if you can, Bhima's Poundra, Yudhishthira, Ananta Vijaya, Sughosha, and Mani Pushpaka. Different names of Krishna, Arjuna, and Bhima. Krishna, all attractive. Rishikesha, master of the senses. Rishikesha means master of the senses, owner of senses. Madhava, husband of the goddess of fortune. And then Achyuta, infallible one. Madhusudana, killer of demon named Madhu. Govinda, one who gives pleasure to the senses or cows. Vasudeva, son of Vasudeva. Vasudeva is Krishna, Vasudeva is his father. Devaki Nandana, son of Devaki. Yashoda Nandana, son of Yashoda. Partha Sarathi, charioteer of Partha, Arjuna. Partha is Arjuna. Okay, Keshava, killer of demon Keshi. Janardana, maintainer of all living entities or killer of all living entities. Dhananjaya is Arjuna, which means conqueror of wealth. Partha, son of Pritha. Kunti Devi's other name is Pritha. Gudakesha, one who conquers sleep. Rukodhara, Bhima, voracious eater and perform Herculean tasks. Saghosho dhatra rashtranam hridayani vidarayat nabhascha prithivim chaiva tumulo abhyanunadayan. The blowing of these different conch shells became uproarious and thus vibrating both in the sky and on the earth. It shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra. When Bhishma and the others on the side of Duryodhana blew their respective conch shells, there was no heartbreaking mentioned at all, right? Nothing happened on part of Pandavas. But when Krishna and Arjuna and rest of them blew their conch shells, the hearts of the Kauravas shattered. It shattered the hearts of the sons of Dhritarashtra. There is nothing to fear for devotees, because Pandavas had a lot of confidence in Lord Krishna. So one who takes shelter of Krishna has nothing to fear, even in the midst of the greatest calamity. Verse 1.20. The battle was just about to begin. And now Dhritarashtra's sons, Duryodhana and all, they were quite disheartened because when they saw the arrangement of the military force on the other side, they were kind of disheartened. And on this side, we have a lot of auspicious signs, which they assure victory. You see Hanuman here on the flag. We have the emblem of Hanuman, and then there is Hrishikesha, Krishna himself, and then Rama and Krishna are one and the same. Hanuman assisted Rama in Ramayana times, right? They won the war against Ravana. So he is here. He is an eternal servitor of Lord Rama. So he is there, and it is eternal consort is also there, the goddess of fortune. And then Arjuna had nothing to worry because the Lord of the senses, Rishikesha, was with him. So good counsel and support, everything was on Arjuna's side. So a lot of auspicious signs. Atha vyavasthitan drishtva dhartarashtan kapidvachaha pravritte shastra sampate dhanur udyamya pandavaha Rishikesham tada vakyam idam aha mahipate. Kapidvaja. Kapi means Kapidvaja is the emblem of Hanuman on the flag, on the chariot you see here. Signs that indicate that Pandavas are going to win the war from the get-go. Again, it's mentioned here. Arjuna's flag on the chariot has emblem of Hanuman, devotee of Lord Rama, signs of victory because Hanuman cooperated with Lord Rama and they both won the battle. Also, Lord Krishna is personally present as Hrishikesha to direct his senses. So a lot of other signs, the sacred place of pilgrimage, Kurukshetra is a very holy place. And then the chariot itself, which was gifted by Agni Dev, and then Bhagya Lakshmi is present on their side because Krishna is there. And then Hanuman's emblem, and then he said Tyakta Jivita, right? Ready to lay down their life. That is also something inauspicious that he said. Then Bhagavad-Gita was spoken on Mokshada Ekadashi. That is also a positive sign. So Arjuna's victory is assured. Signs of victory for the Pandavas. This is in the form of a table, just a little chart. Just a minute. Okay. First reason, Krishna's personal presence confirms victory. Supreme Personality of Godhead is the charioteer. 1.14 In this verse, you'll find that information. Then Krishna as Rishikesha directly controls the senses of a pure devotee. Goddess of fortune is present. Whenever and wherever the Lord is present, the goddess of fortune is also there. Then she never lives without her husband. Therefore, all fortune is guaranteed. Kurukshetra is a holy place. Hanumanji also helped Lord Rama in gaining victory. Symbol of Vishnu. Conch shell is a symbol of Vishnu. Then let us quickly go over this. Transcendental conch shells. Krishna's and Arjuna's conch shells mentioned as Divya. Bhishma's conch shell to pacify Duryodhana. Agni Deva's chariot given to Arjuna, which was capable of conquering all directions. Shattering of hearts. Conch shells of Pandavas shattered Kaurava's hearts. Pandavas' hearts were not shattered because of confidence of taking shelter of Krishna. So we are in verse 1.21 to 22. I think this is where we were supposed to begin. So we'll pay more attention to these verses now. So Arjuna requests Infallible Lord to draw his chariot in the middle of the battlefield. So Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? He's the charioteer here. By his costless mercy, he is engaged in serving his own friend, his greatest devotee. Because the Lord and his devotees have a very sweet and transcendental relationship. He takes great pleasure. Krishna takes great pleasure in serving, he looks for an opportunity to serve his own devotee, pure devotee. That's a very sweet relationship he has. Because it's usually the other way, right? We serve Krishna. We are supposed to serve the Krishna. The pure devotee serves Krishna. But Krishna is also, he looks for an opportunity to render some service to the devotee. He's taking so much pleasure in doing that. He's also infallible master in all circumstances. What does it mean? Just because he's become a chariot driver here doesn't mean he's falling down from his position. He's the Supreme Lord and he's going to stay so. Okay. And here we also will come to know shortly that we know that Arjuna had no desire to fight with his cousins and brothers. He was forced to come here because Duryodhana was not ready to compromise. He was not ready to share the kingdom. So they're actually forced to fight. But he knows there is no peacemaking going to happen now. There's no negotiation. Nothing is going to happen now. They have to fight. He knows that much. Because the other party is bent upon demanding this war, unwanted war actually. So Arjuna requests Infallible Lord to draw his chariot in the middle of battlefield. Senayor ubhayor madhye ratham stapaya me achyuta yavad eta niriksheham yodhukamanavastithan kairmaya saha yodhavyam asmin rana samudyame. Arjuna wants to see who have come to fight, wishing to please Duryodhana. Everyone knew, it was an open secret that Duryodhana wanted to take the kingdom from Pandavas. He just wanted to, by his evil plans, he just wanted to usurp the kingdom. So it's like he had some friends who cooperated with him in this battle. So, they say birds of the same feather flock together. Probably they are also, like Duryodhana only. So Arjuna wants to have a look at everyone at once. So he's saying, let me see. Take me in the midst of the armies. Just to estimate the strength of the armies. He just wants to have a look at them. So when Krishna takes the chariot in the midst of the armies, this is our Arjuna feels very sad. We know how he felt. He was stressed, grieved. He was feeling helpless. So meaning of Achyuta is just, let me go just read this. Meaning of Achyuta, infallible, addressed so because the Lord never fails in affection for his devotees, thus engaged in the service of his friend out of his costless mercy, did not hesitate to carry out the order of Arjuna as his charioteer. Still his supreme position as Rishikesha, the Lord of senses, was unchallenged. Relationship between the Lord and the devotees, very sweet and transcendental. Okay. So that's what we just read, but this is just like a summary. So when Krishna took the chariot there, Arjuna felt very stressed and he also gave a lot of reasons why he doesn't want to fight. He gave reasons because of this, my compassion, no enjoyment. We know those things, right? We learned it in the 18 days class also. Compassion, no enjoyment, sinful reactions, fear of sinful reactions, family traditions, all this. Do you remember all that? Can anyone give me all those reasons that Arjuna gave? Are you a bit on mute? I'm so sorry.
Namaste.
Yes, Mataji. Who was speaking? Neeraj?
Arjuna was compassionate towards
Okay.
the enemies.
Okay, his family was the object of his compassion. Then what else did he say? Why did he say no enjoyment? What did he mean by that? Let me see.
Because when
Chinmati
family
Mataji.
is destroyed, that time we can't enjoy the winning.
Let me see. I will unmute. Mataji, Chinmati Mataji, do you want to answer this?
Yeah, so Arjuna says compassion because he was very compassionate towards his family members. They were his teachers, grandfather, his brothers. So he felt a lot of compassion. There were tears in his eyes. He would not enjoy killing any of them. Third was it would have been a sin according to him to kill his own family members. That is why he was very adamant on the battle. Then there would be family traditions being lost because of this, and there was a high level of indecision in his case to even carry on with the battle. So these were the reasons Arjuna mentions to Krishna that this is why he was very, very confused in going ahead with the battle.
Yes, he said no enjoyment in the sense. This is more like a material reason, He says if the family is gone and whom will I share my opulence with? How am I going to enjoy everything? My family is not there. What am I going to enjoy after winning?
Mataji,
Even if I win. Okay, yes, Prabhu.
uh, Arjuna was also fearful that the family traditions will be destroyed, and the women of that period, when the family traditions will be destroyed, they will lose their they will lose their womanhood, and because of free mixing with other men there, the later period, the next progeny will be of not the same quality as of their forefathers. This was also one of the fears that he had.
Yes, Prabhu. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes, that's true because he said like if the elders of the family are slain, then there won't be any traditions. Family traditions won't be carried on.
Yeah.
And they also offer oblations to the Pitrus, departed ancestors. He said if the
Yeah.
elders are not there, then that won't be done. And women in the family need protection. And if they are not protected, they can get corrupted and unwanted population.
Exactly,
This will
ma'am.
cause a lot of pestilence and there is risk of war and unwanted children may flood the human race and all this. And he said, I don't want to be the reason for all these things. And he was also undecided, like Mataji said. Thank you so
Okay.
much. And then the remote this. Let me just quickly read this again. Okay, why Arjuna asked to move the chariot amidst the armies? Because Arjuna was forced to fight against his wish because of obstinacy of Duryodhana. He was anxious to see who were the leading men present with a desire to fight to please Duryodhana. They all must be birds of the same feather. To see how much they were bent upon fighting, to estimate the strength which he had to face, although confident of victory because of Krishna sitting on his side, but he had no intention of peacemaking at this moment. Okay. Sanjaya Uvacha evam ukto rishikesho gudhakeshena bharata senayor ubhayor madhye sthapayitva rathottamam. Sanjaya said, O descendant of Bharata, having thus been addressed by Arjuna, Lord Krishna drew up the fine chariot in the midst of the armies of both parties. And another thing here is Gudakesha. Gudakesha means, Gudaka means sleep. Okay. Gudakesha means one who has conquered sleep and also ignorance. Okay. Conquered sleep is one thing. What do you mean by conquered ignorance? It's Prabhupada writes actually, conquered ignorance because of his friendship with Krishna. What do you mean by ignorance here? Just, you can tell in few simple words. Conquered ignorance, what does that mean now? How has he conquered ignorance? Can you just tell in, in your own words?
He felt, Mataji, he felt that Krishna is his contemporary.
No, it
Is
says
that?
Arjuna has conquered sleep and ignorance, right? So what does ignorance
Both of
mean here?
these
How
things
did
are
he
done.
conquer ignorance?
We can say he conquered ignorance by being full-time into Krishna consciousness, and that's how he conquered the ignorance.
Yes, Mataji, very good actually. That's how it is, because a pure devotee of Krishna never forgets Krishna, even for one single moment also, for a nanosecond also. Arjuna was like that. He was constantly thinking of Krishna all the time. So that way he was completely devoted by thinking about Krishna all the time. He was actually had conquered ignorance, because anybody who forgets Krishna is actually in ignorance. So that's what it is. He was completely in Krishna consciousness.
Yes.
And Krishna understands, his reasons why he wants the chariot in the midst of the armies. He understands everything. Bhishma Drona Pramukhatah Sarvesham cha Mahikshitam Uvacha Partha Pashyetan Samavetan Kuruniti. In the presence of Bhishma, Drona, and all the other chieftains of the world, the Lord said, just behold, Partha, all the Kurus assembled here. As a super soul, he is in everybody's heart. So he knows what's going on in Arjuna's heart also. That's why he's called Rishikesha, because he knows everything, master of the senses. But he's telling, behold, he just makes a statement. He could have kept quiet, right? Just take the chariot and just sit. But he said, just behold, Partha, all the Kurus assembled here. Actually, Arjuna is also a Kuru only. They belong to the same family, same bloodline. He's just been called Pandava because they just want to separate him and call him Pandu's children. Otherwise, he's also one among them. When you say like, look at your family, so it actually hurts, right? So that's what But here, Arjuna, Krishna actually knows what's coming next. He can understand what's going to happen to Arjuna right now after looking at all this. What's going to say? But he's being a little, he's a friend also. So in a joking way, he's saying, look at the Kurus. It's as if, is this going to stop you from fighting? Something like that. He says with a smile. It's like a friend joking with him. But that's what happens, right? After looking at that, he doesn't want to fight anymore. So it's as if Krishna wants him to go under illusion and all this misery so that, he can start speaking Bhagavad-Gita. So discussion in the purport, some important points. Lord as Hrishikesha, Lord knows Arjuna's mind and thus knows everything, being the super soul of all living entities. Arjuna, referred to as Partha, indicates son of Aunt Pritha. Kunti Maharani and Vasudev, they are siblings. So that's how they are cousins, that's why. Okay. Arjuna sees all the relatives assembled on both the sides. So who all did he see? This is a discussion in the purport. He saw father and mother, teachers, friends, maternal uncle, brothers and sisters, it says, sons, well-wishers, grandfathers. So he's seeing all these people. Okay. So he saw all kind of relatives there. Like there are many names, in the purport. Prabhupada writes so many names. When the son of Kunti, Arjuna, saw all these different grades of friends and relatives, he became overwhelmed with compassion and spoke thus. So verse 1.28 to 1.46, Arjuna's doubts and lamentation. Arjuna's symptoms of compassion. So parts of the body and symptoms. His limbs were quivering, his mouth was drying up, the whole body was trembling, hair of the body standing on the end, hands, his bow, Kandiva was slipping, skin was burning, legs unable to stand any longer due to impatience, forgetting myself and mind reeling due to weakness of the heart. sees only causes of misfortune. When he saw all his relatives standing there to fight, he did not feel good. These were the symptoms. Okay. Any person who is a pure, genuine devotee of the Lord will have all the godly qualities. They are as good as demigods. No, they'll have those qualities, very nice qualities. But a non-devotee, however advanced he is in the material qualification, if he's not a devotee, but he has a lot of degrees and all that, such a person may not have godly qualities. But a devotee, no matter what he is, he will have some, all his qualities. So here it looks like he's getting weaker and he's a weak person, but actually it is not weakness, it is soft-heartedness. That's a characteristic of a pure devotee. So he's seeing death actually, all these people are going to go, and he's actually crying in compassion because his heart is like that, very soft-hearted person. Discussion in the purport. Arjuna's symptoms: body trembling, hair standing on end, Gandiva slipping, skin burning. Bodily symptoms can manifest due to two reasons, right? Great spiritual ecstasy, which do not cause any fear, rather ecstasy. Great fear, material condition. Arjuna's symptoms due to fear due to loss of life, material conception of life. There are two kinds of trembling of the body. Okay, when the hair is standing on end and all, it could be because of two reasons. One is because of great spiritual ecstasy. There is no fear. In transcendental realization, there is no fear. So, but here, that is not the case with Arjuna. His bodily symptoms are because of material fear. What is the worst material fear? What is that material fear? Usually, can you tell me what is the fear that a living entity faces?
Of death.
Of death, loss of life. That's what is causing this material, symptom in him. So all these are due to material conception of life. So his symptom was not transcendental ecstasy. It was other material conception of life. Okay. I'm now unable to stand here any longer. I'm forgetting myself. And my mind is reeling of misfortune. Krishna, demon, he's very impatient and he's getting very, stressed. He's saying, I'm not able to stand anymore. Too much attachment for material things. No, it happens. We get bewildered sometimes when people are too attached. Material attachment could be for things or for, other living entities also. That can cause a lot of disturbance in us. So here Arjuna is seeing only painful reverses. If I fight this war, what's going to happen? So many people are going to die. He can't see anything good coming out of this actually. That's how it is right now. So he's very, and then usually people think about their own self-interest, right? Self-interest, real self-interest is, what is real self-interest? Our self-interest is to achieve Krishna. That is the real self-interest. But we conditioned souls forget that. So that's why we suffer all the material pains, because our self-interest lies in Krishna's interest. So Arjuna thought his victory in the battle would be only cause for lamentation, nothing else for him. So 1.31, I do not see how any good can come from killing my own kinsmen in this battle, nor can I, my dear Krishna, desire any subsequent victory, kingdom, or happiness. So if someone does not know what is the self-interest is Krishna, what happens is, conditioned souls like us, what happens if we forget our self-interest is Krishna? If we don't know, many of us don't know also, right? We just live a normal life, most of the people live like that. They don't know what is their self-interest. So what happens? They are attracted to bodily relationships, and they don't understand even the material happiness they feel is because of Krishna only. That is also because of God. They forget that also. They think, oh, I am causing this. So that's how it happens. And then Prabhupada says there are only two kinds of men who go to the sun globe. One is a Kshatriya who dies on the battlefield under Krishna's instruction. Another one is who is in the renounced order of life, sannyasi. Only these two people can enter the sun globe, Prabhupada says. So now Arjuna is actually reluctant. He's actually forgetting that, as a Kshatriya, it's his duty to fight. And, a person, Prabhupada says, if a person is not, hungry at all, is very full, if you talk about cooking or food to him, he may not be so interested. So like that, he's not interested in fighting right now. But Arjuna is a Kshatriya, and it's his nature to fight. So for a Kshatriya to maintain his, himself, he needs a kingdom for his own subsistence. And the only way he'll get his kingdom is by fighting. So there is no way he can escape. So he's saying, I cannot do it, and he's saying, I will leave all this and go to a secluded place. I want to leave all this. I don't want to fight. I rather beg and live in a forest. He's saying all this out of frustration that you cannot call renouncing, that is not real renunciation. Out of frustration, you cannot say, I don't want to do this because of these material problems and I'm going to become a sannyasi. Then Krishna is going to clear all his doubts in the next few chapters. We'll know who is a real sannyasi. So he's saying, I want to go to the forest because of frustration right now. That's not a good enough reason. And he cannot do that also. So we'll learn that later. Arjuna not ready to fight even in exchange of 3 words. And he also says Govinda. He calls him Govinda. Whenever Arjuna calls Krishna some name, there is a reason behind that. He's calling him Govinda. He says, you are the object of all pleasures for cows and senses. So you are supposed to make me happy, make my senses happy. But actually, Prabhupada explains that's not how it is. Govinda means Govinda is not going to satisfy our senses. We expect him to supply, satisfy my senses now. That's not how it works. If you satisfy Govinda, your senses are automatically satisfied. That's the meaning behind that word Govinda. So he's saying, so Lord is going to satisfy our senses based on how much we deserve. So nothing more than that. So we should satisfy the senses of Govinda and without desiring anything for ourselves. That's when we'll really be happy. So that is real happiness. So now Arjuna is going through a lot of feelings like compassion and all this. So let's see what happens. And another thing we should be saying is, see, if you go back to 18 days and if you go through all the chapters just like that, go through the overview, you will know in the 11th chapter, Krishna told him very clearly that, I have already killed all these people. So at this point, Arjuna does not know that. All these people are already destroyed by Krishna. So he has no choice. He has to fight. He can become an instrument, or you'll give him the choice in the end anyway. You say, if you want to, it's up to you. I've given you all the information. You do what you want right now. But then, so at this point of time, he does not know, what is happening. But Lord Krishna, when, if it's something about himself, on his own account, he can excuse miscreant. But if he's troubling his devotee, he does not spare him. So Krishna wants this fight to happen, because his pure devotee is in stress. So somebody is really bothered them, right? So he wants that miscreants to be punished. He wants this war to happen, take place. Verse 1.36, 43 to 44. Sin will overcome us if we slay such aggressors. Therefore, it is not proper for us to kill the sons of Dhritarashtra and our friends. What should we gain, O Krishna, husband of the goddess of fortune? And how could we be happy by killing our own kinsmen? There are 6 kinds of aggressors who can be killed, They are to be killed at once, right? It is mentioned. We're going to go through those 6 kind of aggressors in the next few slides. So here, what the thing is, Arjuna is not ordinary. That's for ordinary people. If somebody is committing this, you can slay them. No sins incurred. But here Arjuna wants to become saintly now. He wants to be a saintly king, a saintly person. So out of saintliness is saying, I want to forgive. It's nice to forgive, right? They say you must forgive people. No matter what they do, just forgive. So he's saying, I want to be that kind of a saintly person. So that's what he's saying. Lord Rama was also saintly. People wanted to live in his kingdom, be associated with him, Rama Rajya, right? But at the same time, when Ravana, he kidnapped Sita, whatever he did, he committed sins, Rama taught him a proper lesson. So whenever there is a need, a Kshatriya has to perform his duties properly. So in Arjuna's case, there is no Ravana. He's not fighting against some other outsider. it's his own family members. That's what is causing him even more pain now. He's thinking in a different way, because these aggressors are his grandfathers, teachers, friends, sons, cousins. These people are standing against him. So he's a little confused. Like, should I even, how can I kill them? So forgiving is good. So I better, forgive them and then let me go away from here. So he's telling him, you're goddess of husband of goddess of fortune. So he's saying, why are you making me do such things? He's saying, why all this may bring misfortune. So why Krishna is telling that, So actually, Krishna never brings misfortune to anyone, not to his pure devotees at least. No, he'll never bring misfortune even on the demons also. All the demons he killed also got liberation. So, but he just uses all these names to suggest. Arjuna, fearful of sinful reaction. Six kinds of aggressors. Poison giver, one who sets fire to the house, one who attacks with deadly weapons, one who plunders riches, one who occupies another's land, one who kidnaps another's wife. These kind of aggressors to be punished, can be killed as punishment. No sinful reactions incurred. Kauravas did all six kinds of aggression on the Pandavas, and killing them would not give any sinful reaction. They tried to burn their house. They tried to poison them also. Duryodhana tried to poison Bhima. So they have actually done all of this. So there's no sinful reaction. If they get punished in the hands of Arjuna, he's saying nothing will happen. Arjuna, so there's no sense. Arjuna calling Krishna as Madhava, indicating that Krishna should not engage Arjuna, that would ultimately bring about misfortune. Krishna, however, never brings misfortune to anyone, to say nothing of his devotees. O Janardana, although these men, their hearts overtaken by greed, see no fault in killing one's family or quarreling with friends, why should we, who can see the crime in destroying a family, engage in these acts of sin? So actually, you know what, when a Kshatriya is invited to fight by some rival party, by rivals, if they are invited to fight or invited to gamble, they cannot say no. They're obligated to fight. And here, actually, he is obligated to fight because he's been challenged by Duryodhana's party. So, but he's seeing only evil consequences out of this also. Somebody is challenging him to fight, but he still doesn't see anything, good coming out of it. So he's actually considering all the pros and cons. He's thinking through it. I mean, he wants to take a right decision. He's thinking, I don't want to fight because of these reasons. He's considering so many things. With the destruction of the dynasty, the eternal family traditions vanquish, and thus the rest of the family becomes involved in religion. In the system of Varnashrama Dharma, there are a lot of rules and regulations, right? There are some principles, religious traditions that are followed. So if they're not followed, what happens? These are all designed such that everyone in the family and the entire society attains spiritual values. That's why Varnashrama was designed like that. The institution helps everyone to progress on the spiritual path. So one day they can attain Krishna. But here, what is happening is elders help in the purifying processes. These purification processes are, there are so many ceremonies that take place right from birth till death. So he's saying if elders are gone, then, all this is not going to happen. Who is going to take care of the younger family members and all this? A lot of irreligious habits may crop up among the youngsters, and they'll eventually lose the chance for spiritual salvation. Arjuna sees destruction of family. Arjuna sees, due to greed, the opposite party is ready to fight and kill each other. Arjuna understands, this is in 37 and this is in 38. Arjuna understands result of what? Destruction of family. He sees not benefits in participating in this sinful activity. Kshatriya should not refuse invitation of gambling and war. Arjuna sees the other party is blind of effect of this challenge. He knowing the evil consequence, not ready to fight. Destruction of dynasty, loss of family traditions, family tradition vanquished, family involved in irreligion. So in Varnashrama system, elder members of the family are responsible for purifying processes in family from birth to death. Death of elders will stop purification process. Young members will become irreligious. They lose chance for spiritual salvation. That's what we just discussed. Verse 1.40. When irreligion is prominent in the family, O Krishna, the women of the family become polluted. And from the degradation of womanhood, O descendant of Rishni, comes unwanted progeny. So I'll ask you a simple question. What is the basic principle for peace, prosperity, and spiritual progress in a society or in a family? What is the basic principle? It is actually in the purport also. Prabhupada says, mentions this. Can you all unmute? Anybody can?
Good population.
Yes, right, Mataji. Yes, Mataji. Good population. Just a minute. Okay. This good population in human society is required to live a peaceful and prosperous life and progress in your spiritual path also. But what happens? How do you get this good population? By having women who are chaste, who are faithful. So how do you do that? If women are engaged in religious practices and if they're following all the religious rules and everything, they will not be misled. So because children are very innocent, they get it's easy to mislead children, right? Women also like that. They are prone to degradation. It says it's explained in the purport. So they need protection and they need to be engaged in religious practices. If they are in the very chaste and very faithful and they're very faithful to the family, what happens? They raise proper children. They give birth to proper progeny. Then what happens is there is always religious activities going on and the population will be fine. If that does not happen, what happens? There's degradation, and then adultery and all this will lead to a lot of unwanted population, and irresponsible men also can cause a lot of problems in the society. So he's saying all this. An increase of unwanted population certainly causes hellish life both for the family and for those who destroy the family tradition. The ancestors of such corrupt families fall down because the performances for offering them food and water are entirely stopped. See, for people who are engaged in fruitive activities, we go and earn money because we want to make money, we want to live in a proper house, good house, we want to eat food. These are all fruitive activities. We earn. Why do we earn? So that we live a good life. So people who are in this kind of activities, they have to follow some rules and regulations. And under that comes offering food and water to the Pitrus, forefathers of the family. This is very important for them because when these ceremonies are performed, they offer this prasad, remnants of food offered to Vishnu, and that is offered to them. And when they offer all this, if the Pitrus, forefathers are suffering because of their sinful reactions, they can be helped by this. By offering this, they can come out of their sinful reactions. And some of them may not even have got another body. They may be in their ghostly bodies, subtle bodies. So if these ceremonies are performed, what happens is it's actually a help done by the family members for them to attain better life, or help them in their spiritual journey. So it becomes very important to help the Pitrus. That way it helps them. But then if nobody is doing this, then again, it's telling destroy family. The ancestors of such corrupt families fall down because they may not be helped and they may, go through hellish conditions. So what should I do now? I don't like to. That is the reason I don't want to fight. He's giving all these reasons. And there's another chart here for us to understand. Verse 39 to 42. Degradation of society. The superiors are killed. Destruction of dynasty. Destruction of eternal family tradition. Vedic rituals will stop. Irreligion predominates in the family. women become polluted, unchaste, unwanted progeny, Varna Shankara, present society. It's like that. All kinds of community projects and family welfare activities are devastated, results in chaos in society. So we were talking about people who do fruitive activities. They have to perform all these ceremonies and offer the oblations and all. But a pure devotee, Krishna protects that pure devotee. Even if it does not perform all these oblations, Krishna will give protection not only to that pure devotee, to all his Pitrus also, to the future generation also. A pure devotee does not have to go through all that. It does not need to perform those ceremonies and all that, because Lord assures that I will take care of all this. So all the community projects that come under the 4 orders of human society, Varnashrama, Dharma and all that. So he's saying, all that will be disturbed. So our aim is to attain Krishna. So ultimately that will not happen, attain Vishnu. So all this will give rise to irresponsible leaders. It's like a blind man ruling, and a blind leader will create more blind followers also. So there will be a lot of chaos in the society. Okay, Arjuna sees destruction of family and society. Another chart. We'll go over this. Varnashrama system for peace, prosperity, and spiritual progress in life. Failure in Varnashrama system. What happens? Elder members of the family, responsible for purifying process in family from birth to death. Death of elder will stop purification process. Young members will become irreligious, lose chance for spiritual salvation. When is religion prominent in family, women like children need protection. So good population depends on faithful and chastity of women. Women become polluted. They give rise to unwanted progeny, Varna Shankaraha, hellish conditions, family. Then family traditions are destroyed. Ancestors are not delivered. They also fall down. Irresponsible leader brings chaos in the society by destroying Sanatana Dharma, which is Varnashrama system. Risk of war and pestilence. Verse 1.43. Okay, Arjuna fearful of sinful reactions. Oh Krishna, maintainer of the people, I have heard by disciplic succession that those whose family traditions are destroyed dwell always in hell. He's saying, I have heard. He's not saying, I know by experience, I know too much. He's not saying that. I have heard from authorities. I have heard by disciplic succession. That's the right way of acquiring knowledge, So he's basing his arguments on a proper source. He's saying, I have received this knowledge in the right way, the right person who is established in knowledge himself, like a proper guru. So I know that, this is the case. He's saying there is a system of Varnashrama institution, and if this is not taken care of, all this will happen. And this Varnashrama system also provides a chance for people for atonement, prayaschitta. Before we die, we have to, the process of atonement is prayaschitta. For all your sinful activities, you have to atone before you die. The Varnashrama system gives that opportunity also. So if we don't do that, what happens is your sinful activities will be carried over to the next birth. So he says Sanatana Dharma will be destroyed, and then lot of other problems. Miserable lives will continue birth after birth. Verse 1.44. Alas, how strange it is that we are preparing to commit greatly sinful acts. He's saying we. Okay, driven by the desire to enjoy royal happiness, we are intent on killing our own kinsmen. Because of their own selfish reasons, some people are, they can, the world is full of envy. Prabhuji says, you must have heard from senior devotees. They say this material world is full of envious people. So this society is like that, only among devotees you may feel little peaceful. So here he's saying because of selfish reasons, people sometimes are inclined to commit sinful acts. They go kill their own brothers and sisters and whatever. But, he's a saintly person again. So we know moral principles. We know what is good and bad. Why are we doing all this? He's telling we shouldn't be committing sins like this. Since we know what is right, why are we doing this? He's asking. Better for me if the sons of Dhritarashtra, weapons in hand, were to kill me unarmed and unresisting on the battlefield. Okay, according to Kshatriya's fighting principles, actually it's a custom. If a person is unarmed and is not willing to fight, then nobody can attack him. You should not attack such a person because he's not ready to fight. He's unarmed also. He's not willing to fight. So now he's saying, even if they attack me, it's such an awkward situation. But he says, I don't want to fight. Okay, but the other party is bent upon killing him. They are bent upon fighting. They want the fight at any cost. But he's saying this. He's saying all this because of his soft-heartedness. Because he's, very great devotee. Verse 6, Sanjaya said, Arjuna, having thus spoken on the battlefield, cast aside his bow and arrows and sat down on the chariot, his mind overwhelmed with grief. Sanjaya is telling that to Dhritarashtra. So this is what we did today. We almost reached the end of the class. I will just go over the next few slides. Summary. Arjuna's reasons. Arjuna's reasons for not wishing to fight. Compassion. Arjuna's compassion for those he's about to slay dictates he shouldn't fight. Enjoyment. Arjuna thinks he will not be able to enjoy his kingdom if the kingdom is won at the cost of the lives of his family members. Destruction of family. Irreligion and unwanted progeny will overcome the family. Performance of traditional Varnashrama-oriented Vedic rituals will end, and hell will await both the family and the destroyer of the family. Saintliness and fear of sinful reactions. Arjuna thinks enjoying royal happiness is not worth the resulting sinful reactions for destroying the family and killing his superiors. Indecision. Arjuna does not actually know which is better, conquering the enemy or being conquered by them. Okay. So these were the reasons, and you can read about these reasons in these verses. Compassion 1.27, enjoyment 1.32-35, simple reactions in these verses, destruction of dynasty 1.37-43, indecision 2.6-7. He's actually crying, you see. You can see tears in his eyes. Which can you relate to? Compassion, no enjoyment, sin, family traditions, indecision. Which one can you relate to? You can just unmute it.
Indecision.
Okay. Okay, Mataji. Okay, thank you, Mataji. Okay, observing the armies on the battlefield. The summary of today's chapter. Dhritarashtra's inquiry, Duryodhana's fear, glowing of conscience, and then Arjuna's observation, Arjuna's reasons not to fight. Just stop sharing. I'll do one thing. I'll stop the live stream